If you keep buying these 10 things, there's a very real chance you will arrive at 65 with a house full of proof that you lived and a bank account that quietly reveals you never built freedom. And the dangerous part is that almost none of these purchases look reckless when you make them. They look normal. They look deserved. They look like what everyone else is doing. That is exactly why they drain people for decades without setting off alarms. Most people do not go broke because of one catastrophic decision. They go broke because of 1,000 small approvals. A swipe here, a monthly payment there, an upgrade that feels harmless, a reward that seems earned, a convenience fee that feels too small to matter. Then years pass. Income rises. Expenses rise faster. Stress stays the same. And somewhere in the background, the future starts getting sold off in pieces. This is not about guilt. It is not about pretending you should never enjoy your money. It is about learning to spot the purchases that create the illusion of progress while quietly stealing long-term security. Because there are things that feel rich in the moment and make you poor later. And there are things that feel boring now and make you powerful later. Most people spend half their life mixing those two categories up, and by the time they see the difference, the math is brutal. What makes this especially hard is that the most expensive things in your life are often not the things with the highest price tags. They're the things you normalize, the things that renew every month, the habits that become identity, the purchases that drag other purchases in behind them. One decision does not just cost what it costs. It changes the standard you feel you have to maintain. It changes who you compare yourself to. It changes how much pressure your income has to carry. And once that pressure becomes your normal, saving starts to feel impossible even when you technically earn enough. That is why this conversation matters. Because if you're serious about not being broke at 65, you do not just need more money. You need fewer leaks. You need fewer status traps. You need fewer expenses that age badly. And you need to understand one uncomfortable truth before we go any deeper. A lot of what people call lifestyle is really just recurring financial drag wearing nicer clothes. The first thing to stop buying is constant car upgrades. Not transportation, not reliability, constant upgrades. There's a huge difference. A dependable car can protect your time, income, and peace of mind. But the habit of repeatedly trading into newer, more expensive vehicles is one of the cleanest examples of how people turn earnings into depreciation and call it success. Think about how this usually happens. Someone gets a raise. They tell themselves they have worked hard. They say they spend so much time in the car, so they should enjoy it. They justify a higher payment because it fits the monthly budget. And that word right there is where the trap closes. Monthly. Most people do not buy cars based on total cost. They buy them based on whether the payment feels survivable. That framing is financially dangerous because it disconnects the purchase from what it is doing to wealth. A car payment does not just cost the payment. It often raises insurance, maintenance, taxes, registration, and expectations. Then a few years later, when the novelty is gone, another upgrade appears. Another payment cycle begins. And instead of reaching a stage of life where transportation becomes cheap because the car is paid off and still useful, people keep resetting the clock. Decades of payments, decades of lost investing, decades of telling themselves they are doing fine because they can still make the payment. Now imagine two people with similar incomes. One upgrades every few years and carries a payment for most of adulthood. The other buys solid used cars, keeps them longer, and redirects the difference into investments. On the surface, one looks more successful. At 65, the other probably is. The second thing to stop buying is oversized housing costs that exist mostly to impress or emotionally reassure you. A home can be a blessing. A stable place to live matters. But there's a line where housing stops serving you and starts owning you. The problem is not just buying a home. The problem is stretching to the absolute edge of what a lender says you can afford, then decorating, furnishing, heating, cooling, repairing, insuring, and maintaining a lifestyle shell that eats your future cash flow. A lot of people do this because they mistake maximum approval for wise affordability. Those are not the same thing. Banks measure whether you can probably make the payment. They are not measuring whether the payment leaves enough room for retirement investing. Emergencies, career risks, helping family, health surprises, or the kind of life where one setback does not become crisis. A home that looks reasonable on paper can feel like financial suffocation in real life. And here is the hidden cost most people miss. Expensive housing creates emotional pressure. Once too much of your income is committed to the house, every other money decision gets tighter. You become less willing to change jobs, less willing to take a business risk, less resilient during downturns, and more likely to rely on credit when other costs rise. The house becomes more than an expense. It becomes a system that demands your obedience. Before we go further, write this in the comments. One money habit I am changing now. It could be something simple like fewer impulse purchases, pay off my car, stop upgrading, or invest every month. There is a reason to write it down. The moment you put a goal into words, it stops floating around as a vague intention and becomes more concrete. People are far more likely to follow through on a commitment they can clearly name. Sometimes the first real financial decision is not what you buy or stop buying. It is choosing to be honest about the pattern you are ready to break. The third thing to stop buying is daily convenience that has turned into lifestyle autopilot, not occasional convenience, not the coffee you genuinely enjoy once in a while. The issue is when convenience becomes your default setting in every category. Delivery instead of pickup, last-minute fees instead of planning ahead, food apps instead of groceries, premium shortcuts everywhere because time feels tight and effort feels expensive. This is where people get defensive because each purchase looks tiny, and that is exactly why it is dangerous. You do not need one absurd luxury expense to sabotage long-term finances. You just need 100 little ones woven into your week so tightly that they start feeling invisible. Convenience spending is especially sneaky because it usually arrives during stress, fatigue, or emotional overload. You are not making a financial decision. You are trying to make the day easier. That makes the habit feel justified even when the long-term cost is huge. And the deeper issue is not even the money. It is what the pattern teaches your brain. It teaches you to solve discomfort by spending. Tired? Spend. Busy? Spend. Bored? Spend. Behind schedule? Spend. Once that loop gets reinforced, money stops being a tool and becomes a reflex. That reflex is expensive at 30. At 65, it is devastating. The fourth thing to stop buying is status clothing and accessories you cannot truly afford. This one is not about looking nice. There is nothing wrong with quality. The problem begins when your spending is designed to signal identity to other people more than to serve your own life. Because status spending has no finish line. It is one of the most psychologically exhausting categories in personal finance. When you buy for status, you're entering a game where the rules constantly move. The item that felt special becomes ordinary after a few wears. The comparison group changes. The new trend arrives. The luxury standard creeps upward, and suddenly what felt like a reward becomes maintenance. You're not buying joy anymore. You are funding an image that requires constant renewal. People often think this only applies to obvious luxury brands, but it shows up everywhere. Expensive sneakers you barely wear. Watches bought for approval. Designer bags purchased on installment plans. Entire wardrobes built around being seen a certain way online. It is easy to underestimate how much this category drains because it rarely looks as serious as debt or housing. But combine it with years of income pressure, lifestyle inflation, and low investing, and it becomes one more quiet reason someone reaches retirement age asset light. The fifth thing to stop buying is furniture, electronics, and home upgrades you're financing simply because the payment looks manageable. Modern consumer culture is brilliant at turning wants into subscriptions. You do not buy the couch. You buy the monthly plan. You do not buy the phone. You buy the upgrade cycle. You do not buy the home theater or smart appliance package. You buy the ability to say yes today and think later. The danger of financing consumption is not just interest, although that matters. The deeper danger is psychological numbness. Financing disconnects desire from sacrifice. It removes the pause that used to protect people. You no longer have to ask, do I really want this enough to part with that much money? Now the question becomes, can I fit this payment into the month? That change sounds small, but it rewires behavior. And once your financial life gets crowded with these little commitments, something important happens. Your margin disappears. Margin is what keeps you calm when income dips, the car breaks, the rent rises, the medical bill lands, or the market drops. Without margin, every surprise becomes a threat. People think wealth is about earning more. In many cases, stability starts with protecting margin. The sixth thing to stop buying is upgraded versions of your current life before your current life is financially secure. This might be the most common mistake on the list. Bigger apartment before a bigger emergency fund. Better neighborhood before consistent investing. Nicer vacations before high-interest debt is gone. Premium groceries, premium gyms, premium gadgets, premium everything, all arriving before the fundamentals are built. This is how lifestyle inflation hides. It does not announce itself as self-sabotage. It presents itself as progress. You start earning more and naturally feel like life should look better. And some improvement is fine. But when every raise immediately gets absorbed into a better version of the same month, you stay trapped in dependence on your next paycheck, no matter how much your income grows. That is why some high earners still feel financially fragile. They did not fail to make money. They failed to convert income into ownership. They upgraded consumption instead of upgrading freedom. And freedom looks less impressive in the short term. It looks like cash reserves. It looks like boring index funds. It looks like saying no when you technically could say yes. It looks like not appearing richer every year, even while becoming far more secure. If this kind of thinking is helping you see money differently, subscribe now. That simple click does more than follow a channel. It helps keep this kind of practical finance content moving, and it helps more people find ideas that can genuinely change the way they earn, spend, save, and invest. A lot of people are quietly trying to get control of their financial life right now, and sometimes one clear idea at the right moment can save them years of stress. The seventh thing to stop buying is expensive habits that feel small because they are tied to identity. This is where it gets uncomfortable because these purchases often come with an emotional shield around them. Maybe it is the weekend shopping ritual. Maybe it is collecting things that mostly sit around. Maybe it is expensive beauty routines, premium hobbies, daily betting, endless in-app purchases, or alcohol-heavy social spending. The exact category changes. The structure is the same. The habit becomes part of how you see yourself. So questioning the spending feels personal. That is why this category can be so hard to fix. You're not just cutting a cost. You're confronting a version of yourself. The person who likes nice things. The person who deserves relief. The person who has a signature lifestyle. The person who does not want to feel restricted. But a lot of people confuse expression with compulsion. They say this is just who I am, when what they really mean is I have repeated this so often it feels like me. That distinction matters, because if a habit is making it harder for you to build assets, sleep peacefully, or create future options, it is not just harmless self-expression. It is a recurring vote against your long-term freedom. And that vote compounds. The eighth thing to stop buying is financial advice packaged as inspiration, but designed to keep you consuming. This one surprises people, but it may save you more money than any budgeting trick. Not all money advice is useful. A lot of it is dressed up entertainment, social performance, or aspirational branding. It tells you to manifest abundance while ignoring debt, taxes, investing discipline, risk, and time. It tells you to act rich to become rich, which is one of the most destructive ideas ever sold to financially insecure people. Be careful with any message that encourages you to spend like your future self already exists. The future version of you is not helped by expensive signals in the present. Wealth is not created by looking like you have already made it. Wealth is usually created by having the discipline to look more ordinary than your income would allow for longer than your ego prefers. And here is where the trap gets even more dangerous. The more insecure someone feels about money, the more vulnerable they become to image-based advice. They do not just want results. They want relief from feeling behind. So they buy courses they will not use, tools they do not need, wealth aesthetics, luxury productivity systems, or business fantasies with no real plan. It feels like movement. It feels like they are becoming successful. But motion is not progress, and spending in the direction of success is not the same as building it. The ninth thing to stop buying is other people's expectations. This one has no barcode, but it empties wallets everywhere. Family pressure, friend group norms, wedding expectations, holiday spending arms races, birthday standards, group trips you cannot afford, splitting checks on lifestyles that are not yours, buying gifts to avoid discomfort, saying yes because you do not want to seem cheap, behind, or difficult. A shocking amount of financial stress comes from trying to purchase belonging. People do not always overspend because they are careless. They overspend because they are afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of exclusion, afraid of being the only one who says no. And because that fear is social, the spending feels more emotionally urgent than the future does. But here is the reality no one says clearly enough. If your entire financial life gets bent around maintaining comfort in other people, your future will eventually bill you for that silence. There's a cost to people pleasing with money, a massive one. Every time you spend against your own long-term interests to satisfy short-term social pressure, you train yourself to betray your own priorities. Do that for 20 years, and you will not just have less money. You will have less authorship over your life. The 10th thing to stop buying is the fantasy that you can always catch up later. This is the most dangerous purchase of all because it costs nothing up front and everything over time. It shows up as delay. I'll invest when I make more. I'll get serious next year. I'll fix this after the bonus. I'm still young. I have time. People keep buying the story that the future will be more disciplined, less distracted, less tempted, more organized, and more financially wise than the present. Sometimes that happens. Very often it does not. Later is expensive because compounding does not only work for investments. It works for habits, standards, identities, and missed opportunities too. The longer you delay learning restraint, the more costly your normal becomes. The longer you wait to invest, the harder the math gets. The longer you postpone reducing waste, the more years that waste multiplies. Time does not just heal financial mistakes. In many cases, it deepens them. And this is where everything comes together. The real threat is not one bad purchase. It is a way of living that keeps choosing immediate emotional comfort over long-term financial strength. The car upgrade is not just a car upgrade. It is a vote for appearance over ownership. The oversized house is not just a house. It is a vote for image over flexibility. The finance lifestyle is not just convenience. It is a vote for present ease over future margin. The social spending is not just generosity. It is a vote for external approval over internal stability. Now here is the revelation most people miss until much later. Being broke at 65 rarely begins at 60. It begins in the years when your income first starts rising and you quietly decide that every improvement in earnings should immediately be visible in your lifestyle. That is the fork in the road. One path turns higher income into better-looking consumption. The other path turns higher income into stronger cash flow, stronger investments, lower fragility, and more freedom. On the outside, the first path often looks more exciting. On the inside, the second path is the one that eventually lets you breathe. And notice something important. None of this requires a miserable life. That is the lie people tell themselves when they do not want to change. They imagine the only alternative to overspending is joyless restriction. But the real alternative is intentional spending. Spending on what actually matters to you after the essentials and the future are protected. Not spending by default. Not spending to perform adulthood. Not spending to keep up with people who may be drowning in silence themselves. The strongest financial shift many people ever make is the moment they stop asking, "Can I afford this right now?" and start asking, "What is this costing my future?" That one question changes everything. It slows impulse. It exposes trade-offs. It makes invisible costs visible. And it brings retirement, peace of mind, and long-term freedom into the room before the purchase happens. Picture yourself at 65, not as a vague older version of you, but as a real person with a body that may be more tired, a career that may no longer be as flexible, and a future that will depend heavily on the systems you built decades earlier. That person does not need more things from you. That person needs options, lower stress, paid off obligations, investments that grew while you slept, a life that does not collapse if work slows down. The issue is not whether you can still make money later. The issue is whether you are building a life that will require less desperation later. And this is why disciplined spending is not deprivation. It is respect. Respect for your future self. Respect for uncertainty. Respect for the reality that financial freedom is rarely won in dramatic moments. It is won in repeated, often invisible decisions that no one claps for while you are making them. So if you're looking at this list and seeing yourself in it, good. That awareness is not a reason for shame. It is leverage. A lot of people never identify the pattern. They just keep increasing income and increasing pressure at the same time. The goal is not perfection from this moment on. The goal is interruption. Interrupt the auto upgrade. Interrupt the financing reflex. Interrupt the social pressure. Interrupt the habit of solving emotions with spending. Even one interrupted pattern can change your next decade. Several can change your retirement. Start with one category. One, not 10. One leak you can close this month. One payment cycle you can avoid. One recurring expense you can cut without damaging your real quality of life. One financial identity you are ready to outgrow. Momentum matters more than intensity. People often fail because they try to transform everything at once, feel deprived, and snap back. Slow, clear, repeatable decisions are far more powerful than dramatic temporary effort. And remember, wealth is not only about accumulation. It is also about non-need. The less your happiness depends on endless upgrading, the harder you are to trap. The less you need external approval, the cheaper peace becomes. The more comfortable you get being intentional instead of impressive, the faster your money starts serving you instead of the other way around. There's a quiet kind of power in becoming the person who no longer needs to prove prosperity by displaying it. The person who can enjoy nice things without being owned by them. The person who sees a payment plan and hears a warning. The person who gets a raise and sends part of it into the future before the present has a chance to consume it. That person may look ordinary to the world, but over decades, that ordinary discipline creates extraordinary freedom. So stop buying the things that age badly. Stop buying the identities that keep you spending. Stop buying the pressure to look like you are winning while your future gets thinner. The people who retire with peace are not always the ones who earn the most. They're often the ones who learned earlier that every purchase is also a direction. If this opened your eyes, subscribe and stay close to the channel, because learning about money is not a one-time event. It is a skill you sharpen over time. And the more clearly you see these patterns, the easier it becomes to build a life with less stress and more control. Share this video with someone who is working hard but still feels like money disappears too fast, because one honest conversation about spending can save years of regret. And after this, watch the next video on how lifestyle inflation quietly keeps high earners broke, because it connects directly to what you heard today and shows you exactly how to break the cycle before it becomes your future.